there is some news that could directly impact the future of NXT on the USA Network. This was kind of big breaking news this week. NBC confirmed that it will be shuttering its NBC Sports Network by the end of 2021, and that NASCAR and NHL games will be migrating over to the USA Network. And so that would mean a lot of Wednesday night NHL games could either replace NXT or preempt NXT. The NASCAR coverage could impact Monday Night Raw, but I cannot imagine them moving Raw to... You know what? I take that back. I can't imagine that. If the Raw ratings continue to crater this year, then you know what? All options are on the table. There was a time where I would have said to you, I can't imagine a scenario in which Monday Night Raw is forced by USA to move to a different night. Here in 2021, the way things have been going, you know what? I won't say that anymore. And I do think it is something for WWE absolutely to be concerned about as we go forward. You know, the reason that WWE, if you remember, left USA Network all those years ago in the first place, when they went in 2000 over to TNN, which later on became Spike TV, the reason they left in part was because they were tired of being bumped every year for the dog show, the Westminster Dog Show, US Open tennis in the summer. That was the whole reason they said, you know what, we don't want to be preempted anymore. We want to go somewhere where we can be on 52 weeks a year and not have to worry about being bumped for a fucking tennis match or a dog show. There was an internal NBC memo that went out a little bit later on that said later this year, USA Network will begin carrying and or simulcasting certain NBC sports programming, including NHL Stanley Cup playoff games and NASCAR races. At the conclusion of 2021, we have decided that the best strategic step for our sports group and the entire company is to wind down NBC Sports Network completely, with key programming moving to USA Network and in some cases Peacock for 2022 and beyond. It is still very early. It would be premature to say for sure how this is all going to play out, because even NBC doesn't seem to know for sure how this is all going to shake out. But one of my predictions for 2021 was that NXT would be moving, and it would be moving to Thursdays. They have been getting slammed in the overall ratings. They have been getting slammed in the demo by AEW and other programming too, not just AEW, but it's more embarrassing, I think, for it to be AEW because AEW is still a very new product. NXT was the already established brand. And I'm sure WWE, despite whatever Triple H or anybody would say publicly, it's embarrassing. Some of these weeks, the way they get whooped, even the way NXT has done in the last couple of weeks, even when AEW is down, NXT is down even worse sometimes. It's embarrassing. You know, there are weeks where they don't even chart in the top 50 when it comes to the all-important demo. You can't even find them. They're not even in the top 50. Sometimes they've dropped, I think, even out of the top 100 on those really bad weeks. That is embarrassing. I don't think any of the WWE shows have been hurt more by the lack of fans than NXT. Not even Raw. And Raw suffers. I mean, look, Raw suffers from a lack of creative vision more than a lack of fans. The fans are the lifeblood, though, of those NXT shows. Not having them has been an absolute killer. And there's nothing they can do about that right now. That's not even their fault. But the show would be best served to move to a different night. Tuesdays is another option, I guess, but I think... I'm sure the Impact wouldn't be happy about that. Thursday, at least, is pretty much a non-wrestling night. I don't think there's any major shows that air on Thursdays, wrestling-wise. Even MLW Fusion, right? I think that's a Wednesday show. Wednesday's a very busy night. If you are a wrestling fan, Wednesday is a very busy night. And it just so happens that that's also a very popular night for a lot of these sports properties. So Tuesday's another option. I think it should be Thursdays. This news has me convinced even more than I was a few weeks ago that this move is inevitable. NBC has a $200 million rights deal with the NHL that expires this summer. They're in negotiations right now, I'm sure. So there is no guarantee the NHL will even stay with NBC beyond this year. There's said to be interest from Fox and ESPN, But if NBC does keep them, that is going to be a major problem for NXT if they don't move nights. And them moving nights was the right move to make even before this news broke. This week was the fight pit between Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher, and a whole bunch of Dusty Classic tag team matches. If you are a fan of tag team wrestling, then you were in tag team heaven on NXT this week. Leon Ruff and Kushida advanced to the next round with a win over Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory, and the most protected man in NXT, Kushida, pinned Gargano, the North American champion. Kushida tagged with his old Time Splitters partner, if you remember that, Alex Shelley, in last year's Dusty Classic. They got bounced out of the first round. I think it was by the Grizzled Young Veterans. It's too bad they couldn't reunite them again this year. But the only reason they couldn't is because Alex Shelley, it's funny, Alex Shelley, when you think about it, what would you say is, I think I know the answer, but he was part, and this is rare, this doesn't happen a lot to a person who is a tag team wrestler. Usually, if you're lucky enough, you'll be part of one big tag team or one popular tag team in the course of your career. He's been part of two, right? The Motor City Machine Guns and the Time Splitters. Now, if I put the question to all of you, if you're familiar with both teams, which was a bigger deal? Which was the bigger team or the better team? I'm willing to bet the answer is probably going to be the Machine Guns. But he is one of these rare guys who was able to have success in two different promotions with two different partners and, two different tag teams that became kind of a big deal. So he's back with Chris Sabin doing the Machine Gun stuff on Impact at the moment. So I don't think that's necessarily such a terrible thing. Karrion Kross made short work of Ashanti the Adonis, and then his partner, Desmond Troy, who got into the ring to check on his partner when the match was over, and he paid the price for it. He got locked in the cross-jacket submission. He got put out. This was done as an excuse to bounce these two guys out of the Dusty Classic. More on that later. Lucha, and by the way, Karrion Kross, you can tell as far as the separated shoulder, if I'm looking at the correct shoulder, I think it was his right shoulder, you could still see the bump on top of his shoulder. That wasn't there before the injury. And I've heard that. I've heard that guys who have had separated shoulders always have this like bump on top of their shoulder after that. I don't know if it causes problems, if it causes pain, but it definitely stuck when I saw him standing there. It definitely stuck out to me. I mean, it literally sticks out of his shoulder. Lucha House Party beat Imperium to advance to the next round. That surprised me. I did not expect that. Alexander Wolf, he walked out on stage after the match. We haven't seen Alexander Wolf on NXT in many, many months. I assume travel restrictions. We haven't seen Walter back on NXT either. But Alexander Wolf walking out on stage and standing there and, after their loss, Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel, they look up, they see Wolf. Oh, they're surprised to see him. They stand up straight. They do the whole Imperium salute. I don't know where that's going, if they're going to be punished for losing or what Alexander Wolf's presence means, if that means Walter is on his way back to NXT as well to make appearances. So we'll see where that goes. But look, it's nice to see the Lucha House Party treated not as a joke, not as the jobbers that they would be on Raw and SmackDown. So giving them a surprise win here, I think, is a good thing, especially when I look at the match possibilities for them in the tournament going forward. Beth Phoenix was back on commentary in person for the first time since the start of the pandemic. She's been broadcasting remotely from her home, which is what Mauro Ranallo was doing before he left the company. But she was there in person this week to introduce the start of the first ever women's Dusty Classic, which got off to a strong start. Really good match. Back-to-back surprise finishes on this show. Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter beating Toni Storm and Mercedes Martinez. They protected the heels. They had Io Shirai come out and attack Martinez because Martinez is next in line, obviously, for a crack at the belt. So Io came out. Io had been put down by them a few weeks ago. She came out here and got her revenge and went after Mercedes Martinez, and so she took care of her. That distracted Toni Storm. Caden Carter put Storm in a reverse figure 4 leg lock while Casey Catanzaro climbed up to the top rope. And she hit what looked like, the best way I can describe it, it was either a reverse Phoenix Splash or like a corkscrew coffin. The way she landed, it was like a corkscrew coffin drop. It looked ridiculously complicated. And the way that she landed, it didn't have any real impact at all, actually. The landing was not great. But I will give her style points. And it got them the win. And it sent them into the next round. And that was another surprising finish. Santos Escobar, I love the way he says it, Escobar. Santos Escobar did a promo where he referred to himself as the champion of champions. And I am reminded that there is still another man walking around claiming to be the NXT Cruiserweight Champion. He's over on NXT UK, and his name is Jordan Devlin. And so we may be heading for a unification match between these two very soon. Unless I am just reading too much into the whole champion of champions comment. I don't know why you wouldn't do that match anyway, unless you can't get either Escobar over to the UK or you can't get Devlin over to the US. I don't know why this wouldn't be the direction they would go in anyway. You got two people claiming to be the Cruiserweight Champion. You go on WWE.com under the Superstars section, and they have both guys listed as the Cruiserweight Champion. You've got to resolve that. That has to be fixed. And the only way to do that is to have a unification match. But he also mocked a few other people. He mocked some of the other champions, Johnny Gargano, Finn Balor, and he mocked Karrion Kross, who is not a current champion. He is a former NXT champion. He's another heel. And it was very strange that he went out of his way to insult Scarlett and Karrion Kross for not being able to stay healthy enough to even have a first title defense. It's very strange if it's not leading to a match. Lucha House Party interrupted, as did Kurt Stallion, who I would not have known who the fuck it even was if they didn't mention that on commentary. Some blonde guy ran out to rescue them, and they said it was Kurt Stallion. Still no explanation on this show about who he is, why we should care. If you watch 205 Live, okay, sure, you know who Kurt Stallion is. I don't watch 205 Live. And if Kurt Stallion is going to start to make more appearances on this show, then let's explain to the audience who this guy is, what his background is, why we should give a shit, what makes him so special. But Escobar later challenged him to a Cruiserweight title match this Wednesday on NXT. And also on Wednesday, Finn Balor is going to be teaming with Kyle O'Reilly to take on Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. William Regal said that Balor had to find a partner. He couldn't go it alone. And so he went to the man who he has gone to war with twice now. The man who broke his jaw. Since Undisputed Era has also had issues with Lorcan and Burch and Pete Dunne, who all seem far less interesting now without Pat McAfee around. You notice that? Far less interesting without Pat McAfee in their corner. And then we had the Fight Pit. I enjoyed the first one between Timothy Thatcher and Matt Riddle. Timothy Thatcher has been losing pretty much every single one of his matches over the last few months. He needed this win badly. Ciampa has started growing his hair out. He looks about 20 years older than he is. On commentary, we got the closest that we may ever get to a Ken Shamrock mention on WWE television. When Beth Phoenix mentioned, she didn't mention him by name, but she did talk about the Lion's Den. She talked about the old Lion's Den match, which was really the precursor to what is now the Fight Pit. I loved the Lion's Den. We had a whole bunch of Lion's Den matches back in the day. I enjoyed that gimmick. I like the Fight Pit. Maybe most of all what I like about the Fight Pit is the gritty way that it is filmed when they are actually inside. They're not on the platform. They climb down into the cage. And it's not as well lit. It does come away. When you watch it, you do come away with this feeling that you're almost watching this underground fight pit type of match. And so I like that. Doesn't look as bright and flashy as everything else they do. Now, this didn't have a hot start the way that Thatcher and Riddle did. I thought that was just a hot start to the match. And I know at some point Matt Riddle did, it might have been a Phoenix Splash. He did some kind of move off the platform, 8 feet down into the ring. We didn't have any of that here in this match. But I did like the finish. Ciampa hit the fairy tale ending, which is his finish. But there's no pinfalls. So he hits the fairy tale ending and he goes for a sleeper hold. I thought Thatcher should have sold the move more. Again, that is Ciampa's finish. He pretty much no-sold it. That I didn't like. But they fought into the corner, one of the corners of the cage, where there is a gap between where the two walls of the cage meet. There was like a space. And he picks up Ciampa, and Ciampa's leg gets caught in between the two cages. And right outside the cage is one of these tall metal columns, like these metal beams. And Ciampa's leg gets wedged in there. So now his leg is stuck. And Thatcher applies a stretch muffler with Ciampa hanging upside down. And his leg is still trapped, and Ciampa has no choice but to tap out. Which moves Thatcher to 2-0 in these fight pits. After the match, Thatcher fell to his knees, staring at Ciampa in the corner. It's like they shared this look of almost mutual respect for each other. I liked the first fight pit more, but I enjoyed this. This was good, and it was the right outcome. Now, I mentioned Adonis and Troy being taken out of the Dusty Classic after the attack by Karrion Kross. Ciampa and Thatcher have been put together as a team to replace them in the tournament. They are now together, and Friday on 205 Live, they beat Tony Nese and Arya Daivari to advance to the next round. So the men's bracket looks like this. Lucha House Party is going to be taking on Legado del Fantasma. I see Lucha House Party getting another win. I think they're going to move on. They would then meet the winner of the Drake Maverick and Killian Dane against MSK match. MSK and Lucha House Party would be a hell of a match. I think that's what we're going to get. I think MSK is going all the way to the finals. On the other side of the bracket, Ciampa, Thatcher, they're up next against Undisputed Era. They are going to face Adam Cole and Roderick Strong. I would give it to Thatcher and Ciampa. I would have them move on to meet the winner of the Grizzled Young Veterans against Leon Ruff and Kushida. I am sure that Johnny Gargano and or Austin Theory are going to get involved in that match. They're probably going to cost Leon Ruff the match. I don't think they want Kushida to take the fall because he's been the most protected man in this maybe the entire company, outside of Roman Reigns, has been Kushida. So I could see Leon Ruff taking the fall, taking the hit. Gargano gets his revenge on Kushida by costing them their spot in the tournament. The Grizzled Young Veterans, they move on. And, again, that'll pour some gas on the fire between Gargano and Kushida heading into their North American title match, probably at TakeOver. And so we end up with the Grizzled Young Vets against Thatcher and Ciampa. The Grizzled Young Vets were my pick to win when I gave my prediction for the tournament a few weeks ago. I had picked them to go over. This was before I knew Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa, though, were going to be put together as a team in this tournament. I think I'm changing my pick. I think Thatcher and Ciampa go to the finals, and I think it's either them or MSK winning the cup. I think Timothy Thatcher and Tommaso Ciampa are going to win the Dusty Classic, and they are going to get the shot at Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. And they are going to win the NXT Tag Team titles. And we are going to have, I call them reluctant partners. Maybe after a while, look, they flashed a look of mutual respect. They may not be so reluctant. It's an unlikely team. But I could absolutely see them going on to win the whole thing and then win the tag team titles. I think we're going to get a tag team title run with those guys. On the women's side, Priscilla Kelly just signed with NXT, already made her debut. She only signed with them maybe, I don't even know if it was a full month ago, and made her debut on 205 Live on Friday under a new name. Her new name now is Gigi Dolan, tagging with another new recruit, Cora Jade, in a losing effort to Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell in the opening round of the women's tournament. They will now face either the team of Shotzi Blackheart and Ember Moon, or Marina Shafir and Zoe Stark. Stark was their other new recruit, along with Priscilla Kelly and oh my goodness, Cora Stone. The other new recruit was Zoe Stark. She used to go by the name Lacey Ryan on the independents. So what happened to Jessamyn Duke? Why is Marina Shafir then teaming with this new person that she has never teamed with before? Jessamyn Duke is not injured. According to Sean Ross Sapp, she is really happy creating content for Austin Creed's Up Up Down Down channel and doing gaming stuff. She was a full-time streamer before she signed with NXT. So for the time being, at least, it seems like she's more interested in that than she is in wrestling. Hey, me too. I'm also more interested in streaming and creating content than I am getting into the ring. See, that makes two of us. But clearly, look, Shotzi and Ember are going to win that match, and then it's a toss-up. It really is. It's a toss-up. It depends on what happens on the other side of the bracket. If Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez beat Aaliyah and Jessie Kamea, which they will, do they go to the finals? Or do Casey and Caden shock the world again and move on to the final round? They could be the big underdog story in this tournament. If they go to the finals, then it's going to be against Candice and Indy. And if Dakota and Raquel move on, I think it's going to be against Shotzi and Ember. And that is definitely the stronger of the two matches. If you do Shotzi and Ember against Dakota and Raquel, I think that is going to be your final match. And I think Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez are going to win the entire thing. And I've seen some people speculate, well, maybe Raquel is going to turn on Dakota and they're going to break her away from her. Look, it's possible. Anything is possible. But if they don't break up, I think they're going all the way to the finals, and I think they're going to win the tournament. Then they would challenge Asuka and Charlotte Flair for the women's tag team titles. And if that happens, I think they're going to win those titles from them. We already know that Asuka and Charlotte, they're not going to be tag team champions for the long term. It's just a matter of time before they have a falling out. They drop them. Maybe then it sets up a match between them at WrestleMania. We know it's coming. So when that match happens, if it is Dakota and Raquel as the challengers, I think that's how you get the belts off Asuka and Charlotte. And now, all of a sudden, Raquel Gonzalez, you can get Raquel not only on NXT, but you can get her on Raw and SmackDown with Dakota. Because the women's champions are supposed to be able to float between brands.